This video is in response to a video I received from Sinfultictac, and basically he was asking me a lot of good questions on the educational system, because of the fact that I had said I was an educator, a Christian high school teacher at a Christian high school, and wanted to get some information on my take on some of the issues in the educational system in America today. Before I get into answering your questions, because this I had never heard before, and I kind of wanted to ask about it just for my own sheer knowledge, I guess you could say, to see where you're coming from with this. But you had mentioned that you would consider yourself a sci-fi religionist, and I could use my imagination all day long and probably come up with hundreds of concepts and ideas that could fall into that. But being that I've actually never heard the term before, I was just, for my own curiosity, wondering if maybe you could give me an idea. I know you said that you took some of the stuff some of the ideologies and kind of relate them into your own life. And I don't know, I was just wondering if maybe you could throw me an example. But let me go ahead and get started into your questions here. Your first question was, how would I pose to solve the public school system and doing it without offending any particular religion, race, creed? I kind of want to say that's a really tough question for me to answer. And the reason I say that is because this past school year is actually my first year as an educator. So for me to sit here and say how I think I would solve the public school system would be a little tough for me to do, because I don't feel that I would be in any way qualified or by any means think that I have the knowledge as to what would need to be done to adjust the public school system. Do I want to get into what I would suggest? I really don't. I wouldn't even know where to begin, just for the simple fact that, like I said, being a first-year educator, this was almost a whole learning process for me. This whole last year, just getting into the whole educational system, period. Developing lessons, implementing those lessons, creating lessons that had to fit within a time frame, and making sure all of that information was covered. And it was, it was a pretty tough year for me, but I also learned a lot. Now, 5 years down the road, if you want to ask me that question, I might have a different take on it, because I can look back and say, well, I've applied these things in my own teachings, and they worked, and for some students and not for others. Your second question was, do I believe that a child with a learning disability, should the education of that child be the responsibility of the parent, the teacher, or the educational system that child's in, or the child itself's responsibility to solve that problem with the learning disability? It's probably a responsibility of all three, with the greatest responsibility on the parent. And when I say the greatest responsibility, let me put myself in that situation for a minute. I have a child that has a learning disability. As a parent, that's my child. So from the time that child is born until the time that child is a responsible adult, I am responsible for that child and everything that falls into raising that child, education being one of them. If I notice that my child has a learning disability, and the teachers, the educators, are either not recognizing it or are informed of it and not taking it upon themselves to assist in that problem, then I think it's my time, my opportunity, or my responsibility as a parent to move that child into a system that will recognize that problem and assist me in educating the child and helping the child overcome that problem, or learn how to continue to educate even despite the problem as best as it can. Now also, as far as the child itself, that I think would depend on the learning disability, because certain learning disabilities, I don't think, if we were to go all the way to the most extreme, which obviously is not just a learning disability but also a an altogether disability, a mental disability, then the child may not have the ability to even comprehend that it has a problem. So then, of course, it couldn't be the responsibility of the child. If it's something as simple as an ADD type of issue, then it would be the child's responsibility to understand that particular disability and know how it affects him or her's ability to learn, and take that into consideration when studying for tests, doing homework, winning class, stuff like that. So as far as the child itself, it kind of depends on the nature of the disability in that particular case. Let me move on here. Question number 3. You said, do I think that we need to start fresh with our education system? Wipe out the whole thing and start all over? And that kind of ties back into question 1. I don't know, and I don't want to portray that I do know and say that I have the answer and I think that this is what we should do, when in actuality I'm still kind of learning the educational system as a whole myself, being a first-year teacher. So I'm kind of going to, my answer to that is obviously going to be the same as my answer to the first question. But you had also asked about standardized testing. What is my take on standardized testing? And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a bad thing. I think standardized testing is a great way to assess where different students are in their learning process. Great. I don't think it should be anything more than that. Okay? Because what you're having now is the teachers that are rearranging and shifting their entire teaching process into teaching that test. Focusing, eliminating this particular subject, cutting this subject short, cutting all these different things out of the picture solely to teach, what it is that they need to do to be able to get the best grade on an SAT or something like that, or, the best grade on an FCAT. And I don't think that should be the case. I think that the teacher's responsibility should be to teach the broad array of subjects that a child should learn, through the education process, and not focus on the testing itself. And the testing should be simply supplemental to the educational system. Every year we'll take a test, and then we can see each individual child, the parents can get a result of the SAT scores and see, okay, my child is above average in math, they're above average in reading, their science skills or their listening skills, these are problems, these are areas that I need to work on. And then I think that the parents should also be involved in the educational system in the way that they should be noticing that if their child is great in math, great in science, great in social studies, but lacking in reading, or something lacking in a particular subject, but the school is not taking it upon themselves to say, okay, these are the children that are in a below average reading level. They shouldn't be in the same reading class as the kids that are above average. We need to separate the groups of children by their current learning ability or their current level of that subject, rather than, okay, all 6th graders need to be in a 6th grade class, even though some 6th graders can read at a, college level, and some 6th graders are still stuck at 3rd grade. Should those kids be all grouped in a class together? Absolutely not. There should be different levels of class, and the students should be placed into classes that fit their ability so that they can learn and are pressed to learn, more, so that they're not stuck at that same ability. You put a kid that's below average in a class that's reading above average, and you mix them all together, either the below average or the above averages are going to be slowed down to adjust for teaching the kids that are below average, or the below average kids are just going to be lost and bored and not paying attention and could care less because they're learning stuff that they don't even know how to do anyway, so why should they care? That's my take on the standardized testing.